copy. Let's have a look at it. Don't forget to change into your Dwarf Underground directory. So for the most part, what you're looking at here is the result of running Create React App. So Create React App is an official project from Facebook who created React. And it's a simple way to bootstrap a brand new React site that's already pre-configured with some of the pain in the neck stuff. So that's basically what this is, a blank Create React App site, with the exception that we've thrown in static CSS and static HTML. So this HTML file and this CSS file are what you see here. So it's the stuff we want to copy into our React components. So we've got a public directory, which has index.html. Index.html has a bunch of stuff in the head, some comments that explain it a little bit, and a body with just a single empty element with an ID of root. It's also included a couple style sheets that are going to help us. Everything else is in the source directory. So the source directory has index.js, which imports React and React DOM. It imports our component, and then it calls React DOM.render with our app component and telling it which element from the DOM to replace with that component. So that's already done for us. We don't have to worry about that. And it's already got an app component written. Now, it's not ours. We're not going to keep it, but it's there. Outside of the source directory, which is where the app really lives, we have a package.json. Has a little bit of metadata. Dwarf Underground, version, private. That's not really true. And a list of dependencies and scripts. So now that we're using React, we have a need to do some dependency management. We need a package manager. Anybody ever used a package manager? Any Linux users? What flavor of Linux you use? Okay, does that use apt-get or what does it use? Okay, yeah. So if you're using any Linux distribution, you're going to have some sort of package manager to install software. Homebrew, which if you use a Mac was how you installed some of the stuff. Homebrew is a package manager. And Peck the App Store is really a package manager. And one thing that package managers tend to do is not only manage the third-party stuff that your app depends on, but manages whatever those things depend on. So we rely on React and React DOM. Those are dependencies. Those are third-party scripts we want to include here. Now, we could just go get react.js, download it, and place it into our project. But then we'd be responsible for keeping it up to date. We'd have to make sure all of React's dependencies were there, and that's just more trouble than we really want to go to. So we use a package manager to manage it. So we list our dependencies here. And then we need a package manager that actually loads those things. And so for that, the de facto standard package manager for JavaScript is called NPM, or Node Package Manager. But the NPM client is quite slow, and this Wi-Fi network is slow enough as it is. So we're going to use Yarn, which uses the exact same repository as NPM and is compatible with it, but is generally faster, and I like it better, and hopefully you installed it as part of your setup steps. So you should already have it. So in your Dwarf Afternoon or Dwarf Underground directory, just type yarn install. If you don't have yarn, npm install will do the same thing. And it may take a minute. The one thing you'll notice is that as it's running, you get a new folder in your project. Node modules. So what that yarn install command actually does is find all of the dependencies and its dependencies, and their dependencies, etc., and downloads them all and puts them in this node modules folder. So we had 3 dependencies, React and React DOM, and then a dev dependency, React scripts. So I should only see about 3. Holy crap! I'm not even out of the A's. I'm only halfway through the A's. Okay. That's a lot. Thank goodness for dependency management. We only needed these 3 things. Well, it turns out React scripts includes a whole bunch of other stuff that's very handy for us to use. Now, most of that stuff is not stuff that's actually required for our app to run, which is why it's in dev dependencies instead of dependencies. It's just for us to use while we're developing. So all that stuff gets downloaded and put into node modules. And we have a gitignore file here already pre-made for us. You can always put a .gitignore file in a Git repository and list any files that you don't want included in the repository. And node modules is already there. So node modules will not be included when we commit. Because we're just going to require anyone who wants to clone this and use it, they need to have npm or yarn. If they have either one of those, they just have to type install, and they get all that stuff. So that's good enough for us. Notice it doesn't show me any changes. If I run git status, even though that entire directory was added, there's nothing there because it's in gitignore. All right, so we have this thing. We can't just run index.html in a browser. It's not going to work. Our component is not real JavaScript. It's JSX. It has to be compiled down to real JavaScript. So for that, we need some sort of build process. And during development, we can just use a dev server that is included with Create React App. If you look in package.json again, you'll see at the bottom some scripts, one of which is start. So to run these scripts, we can just type yarn start, and it does it. If you're using npm instead of yarn, it's just npm start. And it opened it in a different browser window. Here it is. So here's what we got. Here's what our app actually looks like right now. Because remember, this part is just in static HTML here. It's not actually being served up by React. React is serving this. So this is that React component that we already have in app. Open up your dev tools, and hopefully you all installed the React dev tools as part of your setup. If we switch over to that, we can see our list of components. So app is not in the HTML, just the rendered JSX is. But we can see that here. And we could see any props if it had any, and we could see state if it had any. So this is a very handy thing that we're going to be using a lot when we start writing our own code. But this is what we've got so far. Now your server is monopolizing your terminal window at the moment. So if you need to type more commands, you can open up a new tab or something, or open up a new window. So you can keep using the terminal while it's running. Notice it starts a web server and starts it on localhost port 3000, but it automatically opened that in your browser. So let's look at app.js. It's rendering all this. It's returning this stuff. How about, I'll leave that outer div there, and I'll get rid of everything else, and just put an H1 that says Dwarf Underground. I'll save that. Browser automatically refreshed. So while you're running the dev server, any changes you make will automatically be picked up. The code will be recompiled, and it will even refresh your browser window for you, assuming you haven't introduced such a bad error that the whole server crashes. Speaking of which, how do you close the server? How do you stop it running? What's that? Good guess. Control C. Not Command C on a Mac. Control C, no matter which platform you're on. Control C to just kill that process. Then you could type yarn start again to start it back up. But we're happy with it running. But look, there's a warning here. On line 2 of app.js, logo is defined but never used. So it had that spinning atomic-looking logo. That was the React logo. We're not using that anymore. So this is configured to actually give us certain warnings like this. Anytime there's a variable that we've defined but not used anywhere, it gives us a warning. So we'll just take that out. And you know what? Okay, the warning goes away. I don't think we need logo.svg in there at all. I'm just going to delete logo.svg. That was just some boilerplate that was included. And I suppose app.css has a bunch of CSS in it that was specific to what was there before. So I'm just going to remove all this. I'm going to leave the file, but I'm going to remove its contents. And I'll do one more thing. In public index.html, we have the page title, React app. Let's just change that to Dwarf Underground. If we save that, we'll see the title changed in our tab. And that's the last we're ever going to see of index.html. Never have to deal with it again. So I'm going to commit that much. Just remove create React app boilerplate. Questions? Cool.